So after putting together several loaded events filled with some of the nation's top prospects, the Texas Longhorns are starting to make moves on the recruiting trail, and today we need to talk about the newest addition to the Texas 2025 recruiting class. As three-star offensive tackle out the state of California, John Mills commits to Texas, we need to break down why this is a great fit, what an incredible job Kyle Flood does on the trail, and everything in between. But before we can, as always, y'all know the drill. I have got to hear from you. Hop down to the comments, Y for yes, N for no. Are you excited that Mills commits to Texas? And let me know what you're thinking. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, hit that bell notification as I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it. And we are a hair away from our next milestone of 22,000 subscribers. I'd love to have you a part of the channel and the community. And if you enjoyed this content, be sure to like and comment down below, as those interactions seem small. They are massive. But having said all that, let's jump right into this. And as always, who is John Mills? Well, Mills is a three-star offensive tackle out the state of California, where he stands 6'6", 320 pounds. And one of the things you're going to notice about Mills is that he has a lot more mobility and athleticism than you may expect for someone 6'6", 320. Now, athleticism is probably to be expected, but the mobility he brings to the table, that's the first thing that flew off the screen for me. Is he's able to get to the second level quickly and handle guys and create an absolute trail of destruction for the running back or whoever to follow. The other thing I noticed about Mills is something I talk about all the time that I love for guys to have whenever they play in the trenches, whether that's offensive line, whether that's defensive line. And it's something that you really can't teach, and it's that tenacity. Not quitting until the whistle is blown, because that trench warfare, that's an entirely different battle than anything else on the football field. And so I love it when I'm turning on the film for these guys and you see some of these guys, whether it be offensive line, defensive line, and they just have that tenacity, play in, play out, because that's something you either have or you don't. Whenever we're talking about technique, you can teach technique. Tenacity typically is something you're born with. Are you going to persevere? Do you have that dog in you that is going to allow you not to quit? You either have it or you don't. That's very difficult to teach, and Mills has it. Play after play, you're seeing him take his guy completely out of frame and not quit until the play is completely dead. I love that, because I think the guys that have that intangible, it's a lot easier to teach them the technique. It's a lot easier to teach them the game of college football and for them to make that jump, because they don't know what quit is. And especially for an offensive lineman, in my opinion, that's a must-have intangible for any guy on the recruiting trail if I'm looking at an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman. And as we talked about earlier, Mills may be a three-star guy, but whenever you hear these stars, and here recently on the channel, you've noticed there's a certain theme that we've been talking about in relation to stars. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you stars don't matter, because that would be facetious. Whenever we look, there is a blue chip ratio that has continually proved true in college football, and that ratio exists for a reason. If you look at the proportionality of guys drafted, you are far more likely to be drafted in the first round as a 5-star than a 2-star. However, and this is a very important however, we would be fools to not also admit that there are so many high school football players that inevitably some guys are going to be underrated. And I say some, a lot of guys are going to be underrated. What I would implore anybody to do is to look at the offer list, watch the film that they have, watch their huddle film, and you'll see a lot of these guys could easily be 4-stars. And when we're talking about Mills, you're talking about teams such as, obviously, Texas, Florida, Washington, Cal, Nebraska, Arkansas, Michigan. I think they know what they're doing on the offensive line. Penn State, TCU, A&M, Texas A&M, UCLA, USC, and Utah. So you're having major universities all battling it out for this offensive tackle, and whenever you watch him play, he far outplays that 3-star rating. While rankings and stars don't not matter, what I would argue matters more is evaluation and scheme fit. And whenever we're talking about Kyle Flood, he knows what he's looking for. And if he can find a guy that he says, I like the intangibles you have, and I want to add you into our recruiting class. That's an absolute win. If your coaching staff has evaluated a kid, they like the game they bring to the table, and they want them a part of that recruiting class, that's a win. I don't care if they're a 0-star, 1-star, 2-star, 3-star, 4-star, or 5-star. It's all relative at that point. Your coaching staff likes their game, wants to add it in, and is excited to get that win. So that's a conversation we've been having here on the channel recently, both in live streams and videos, is about what do we do with stars? How do we view them? And it's an interesting conversation, one I'd like to really unpack, really explain in a dedicated video, but until that day, let's also talk about what an incredible job Kyle Flood does on the recruiting trail. I've talked about this before. If you're listing out your best offensive line coaches in the nation, Kyle Flood's probably got to be on that list somewhere near the top. I mean, he has done a phenomenal job, and whenever you look at offensive line coaches as recruiters, Kyle Flood does an amazing job. Let's go through just some, once again, just some of the big wins he's gotten on the trail. You have J.C. Latham, who's a 5-star. You have Tommy Brockermeyer, once again, 5-star. DJ Campbell, 5-star. Brandon Baker, 5-star. Kelvin Banks Jr., 5-star. TJ Ferguson, 4-star. Neto Umazulu, 4-star. Javion Cohen, 4-star. Malik Ogbo, 4-star. Jaden Roberts, 4-star. Sadir Mitchell, 4-star. And Cole Hudson, 4-star. Once again, that's just scratching the surface, but if I was to go through all of the guys Kyle Flood has successfully recruited, we'd be here for a very long time. That's what a good job he does on the recruiting trail, and everywhere he goes, you can see a tangible impact on the offensive line. You can see his coaching come to fruition and that offensive line drastically improve year to year. And now we look at Texas, that's one of the better offensive lines in all of college football. A lot of that has to do with scheme and Kyle Flood. So it's going to be interesting to see what work they continue to do on the offensive line. They are in battles for some top offensive linemen, some top offensive tackles in all of high school football and college football recruiting. So we're going to be watching closely to see what wins they can amass. But understand this, as Texas is sitting there right now with the number 16 overall class with 12 commits, they have positioned themselves in a really interesting position for several top prospects. They might not be top 15 yet, but that will come. Make no mistake about it. They have positioned themselves in striking distance with several top prospects. And in my opinion, it's going to be one of those things where when it rains, it pours. Whenever these guys start popping off and committing, you're going to see an absolute avalanche in Austin. So that's something we're going to have to watch for. Hop down to the comments. Let me know what you're thinking. That's it. See ya.